Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Gather and Go, the podcast that helps you plan, promote, and lead better trips. I'm your host, Brian Jewell. I am delighted to have you with me today. And as always, our promise to you is that we're going to do everything we can to make this investment of your time worth your while. We got a great show for you today, including a really fascinating featured conversation with Shannon Stowell of the Adventure Travel Trade Association. Shannon is going to really pull back the curtain on adventure travel. You're going to hear in this interview why you may be leading adventure travel without even realizing it. He's going to put to rest the myth that older travelers don't engage in adventure. And he's going to share some ways that we can all make more responsible travel choices on the road. This is a really informative conversation. I can't wait to share it with you. Before we get there, though, let's start with some travel news you may have missed. Norwegian is canceling dozens of cruise departures. Norwegian Cruise Lines announced it is canceling 40 sailings across 2 of its ships. The affected departures were scheduled to take place on board the Norwegian Breakaway and the Norwegian Prima from November 2026 to March 2027. In a letter to travel advisors, Norwegian said the change is due to a fleet redeployment initiative. The company will automatically refund all fares paid by passengers to their original forms of payment used at the time of booking. It's also offering affected passengers a 10% discount on future cruises. The Norwegian Breakaway was scheduled to operate a series of 7-night Southern Caribbean cruises from San Juan, Puerto Rico during the time period in question. The affected Norwegian Prima cruises were set to depart from New Orleans and sail the Western Caribbean for a week at a time. Norwegian said the new deployment plans for both vessels will be announced at a later date. Well, now it's time for the road tip segment of our show. This is the part of every episode where we dig deep into our bag of travel knowledge from decades on the road and bring you tips to make your next trip less stressful and more successful. You know, when I first started traveling, all the travel experts back then said, if you go abroad, if you want to use or charge a device abroad, that you needed an adapter and a converter for any of your electrical appliances that you wanted to use. Now, this is back in the day when the conventional wisdom was also that you should use traveler's checks everywhere you went, and when you would ask the hotel receptionist to set a wake-up call for you every morning. So if you're wondering just how old I am, well, there you go. But a lot has changed in both the worlds of international travel and the worlds of consumer electronics since that advice was current. So I thought today, for any of you who might be planning group trips abroad, particularly if it's your first time taking a group abroad, or if some of your customers might be making their first trip overseas with you, that it would be a good opportunity to give you an update on the ins and outs of using electronic devices in foreign countries. So the big question is, do you need an adapter? Do you need a converter? What is the difference between an adapter and a converter? Let's talk about all that really quickly. When do you need an adapter? An adapter simply changes the shape of your device's plug that goes into the wall into the shape of the outlet in the country you're visiting. So here's how that breaks down. In Canada, Mexico, Central America, South America, and interestingly, Japan, you should not need an adapter at all. The same goes for most cruise ships departing from the U.S. All of these destinations use the same electrical outlet that you're used to seeing here in the U.S., and your devices should work with it just fine. Now, in most European countries, as well as much of the Middle East, some of Asia, some of Africa, you will need an adapter that changes from the standard American plug to a plug with 2 perfectly round posts. But that does not apply to the United Kingdom. The UK, of course, has its own kind of electrical outlet, as do many countries with historic ties to the UK, maybe some that were colonies of the British Empire at one time. In those countries, you'll need a different kind of adapter that has 3 sort of rectangular prongs that are set perpendicular to each other. This is easy to figure out if you search online for what these look like. If you're going to China, Australia, or New Zealand, these countries use yet another type of outlet. These also have 3 prongs they are set kind of diagonally from each other. So wherever you're going, it's helpful to know whether you're going to need that adapter or not. Now, what is a converter? A converter is different from an adapter. Converter does not change the shape of the plug head. What it does is convert the voltage of the electricity coming from the wall into your device. This was traditionally an issue because the US runs on lower voltage 110 volt electric currents in most houses and commercial buildings, whereas a lot of the world uses higher voltage, around 220 volts or higher. And what that meant traditionally was that if you plugged your low voltage US device into a high voltage foreign outlet, it could potentially overload your device, maybe fry the circuitry, perhaps be a fire risk, that sort of thing. But the good news is that this has changed quite a bit. Most all devices that you use commonly now, including your cell phone, your laptop, anything like that, are what are called dual voltage devices, which means you don't need to convert electricity from one standard to another. They have been configured to work on all of the world's different electrical standards because, of course, these people manufacture their devices to be used all over the world. The only time you may really need a converter is if you're bringing your own hair dryer, maybe a hair straightener or other high voltage device. It may be necessary to convert the electricity in your foreign hotel room from 220 volts down to 110 volts. Even on those hair dryers and other hair accessories, many of those are dual voltage now. You might have to flip a switch from 110 to 220 or back to make sure you are conforming with your country's electrical service standards. But it's really only necessary to use that converter if for some reason you just have an old hairdryer that you can't part with or something like that. I think it's better just to use the in-hotel equipment and save yourself the hassle. My wife, I'm sure, would have reasons why hotel hairdryers are not worth the using. So if you do need an adapter, what should you buy? Well, what I have found is that the most convenient way to go is to get a universal adapter. This is one single device that can literally plug into any outlet in the world. They're kind of funky looking, but they are super convenient, especially if you think you're going to be in various parts of the world at different times. You can generally find those online for about $30. Before you invest in a converter, check those devices you're going to be traveling with. Make sure you actually need a converter because the good news is in 2025, you probably don't. And that is your road tip of the week. Well, before we move on, I want to take just a minute and share a little bit of news from us. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've probably heard me talk about our on-site familiarization tour program. That is the program we run in partnership with destinations in the US and sometimes around the world to put together familiarization tours and give you a chance to get to know some fantastic places firsthand. Now, I have been telling you about different trips we've been running this year. I have more trips coming up that I am excited to tell you about. I can't let the details out just now, but what I can tell you is this. If you want to get at the top of the list to get announcements about fam tour opportunities we have coming up, the easiest way to do that is on our website. If you go to grouptravelleader.com/fams, that's going to bring you to our on-site fam page. You're going to get to see a list of all the current fam opportunities we have there, and you can register for any of those right on the page. It's also going to give you an opportunity to sign up for our fam announcement list. Super simple. And of course, it's free. You give us your first and last name and your email address. And that means as soon as we have a new fam to tell you about, you're going to get that email at the very first moment. Give yourself the best chance to apply early and hopefully join us on a future fam tour. Now, again, that is grouptravelleader.com/fams. I will put a link to that in the show notes as well. I would encourage you to check that page out. In addition to seeing our upcoming opportunities, you're going to see dozens and dozens of fam tours we have run in the past. If you click through on some of those, you'll see our magazine articles from those trips. It's actually a great way to get some itinerary inspiration from destinations around the country. So check it out today, grouptravelleader.com/fams. Well, it's just about time for us to get into our featured conversation with Shannon Stowell. Before we do that, let me remind you that I'm going to be making notes of some of the most important things Shannon has to say as we talk, and you can find those in the show notes for this episode. Show notes are the text that displays just below the audio player wherever you are listening to this podcast. And at the end of the interview, I'm also going to come back and make note of some of those important things and recap them just to make sure you don't miss some of the real key things that Shannon delivers in this interview. I want to encourage you to stick around to the end of that wrap up, because when it's over, I want to share with you some of the things that I think are absolute keys to becoming a true travel professional that way too many people in our industry are missing. That is going to be the subject of today's Hot Minute. You won't want to miss that. We'll be right back with Shannon Stowell. All right, everybody. My guest today is a 30-year veteran of adventure travel and outdoor retail. After founding alltrek.com, an outdoor and adventure travel gear retailer, he became president and CEO of the Adventure Travel Trade Association, where he travels the world advocating for responsible tourism and training destinations and tour companies. He serves on the boards of Tourism Cares and the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, and is the co-author of the book Riding the Hula Hula to the Arctic Ocean, a guide to 50 extraordinary adventures for the seasoned traveler. Shannon Stowell, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Brian. Happy to be here.
I am so glad to have you here. I got to ask right off the bat, what exactly is the hula hula and how do you ride it to the Arctic Ocean?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister too. It's a river in Alaska, and you can actually raft, do like long distance rafting on that. And that was an article by my co-author Don Mankin, who's an amazing adventurer who hit his 80s this year.
Wow!
But we wrote the book a number of years back, but that was one of his adventures of a lifetime. So
yeah, that sounds amazing. See, my mind was in Hawaii, so I was way off.
Well, I'll admit, when I first heard it, I thought the same thing. I wasn't aware of it either. But yeah, it was a really fun project, and we got the funny thing is we ended up getting Richard Branson to write the foreword.
That's amazing.
It was because I had met one of his executives at a conference, and I reached out and said, I know this is an absolute stab in the dark. And he's like, yep, you're right. That's a stab in the dark. You can't imagine the number of requests he gets. And then I didn't hear anything for about 4 or 5 days. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, I got an email directly from Richard Branson.
Wow.
And I can't prove it because my hard drive crashed shortly thereafter and I never saved it. So you have to trust me on that one. But yeah, it was a really fun project.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to get into some of the things you covered in that book in a little bit. But first, tell us about your journey. How did you go from, being an outdoor retail entrepreneur to, being one of the world's leading voices on adventure travel?
Well, I think, and I promise not to go too far back, but my parents moved us from suburban Denver to the mountains of Colorado when I was a kid, and that unleashed my brother and I into the world of our own adventures. My parents were so concerned about us getting caught up in the trappings of teenagers that they basically said, as long as you're going into the outdoors, we're going to give you tons of freedom.
Wow.
So I think for me, adventure started there. And that's actually why we started, my friend and I started an e-commerce company for outdoor gear, outdoor retail. He was more intrigued with the idea of e-commerce. And then we sat down and said, well, what should we sell? Well, we both love the outdoors. Let's do outdoor gear. Nobody's doing it. Yeah. It was back in 1997. And so we were in the very early days, and rei.com went live in the middle of our, actually in month 3 of our building the business. And so It both terrified us and also confirmed the concept.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. So you did that for a while?
Yeah. So then while I was in the outdoor retail business, we were looking at the different categories of activities, and it seemed like, I don't know that we were even right, but it seemed like adventure travel was a little bit neglected in the outdoor retail space. And so we got intrigued. I joined the ATTA as a member, and after about 2 years, convinced the founder of it to hand over the reins to me in 2004. So I did 6 years of e-commerce of outdoor gear, and then moved into the ATTA in 2004, and honestly, I've never looked back.
Yeah. How cool. What a journey. So it's interesting to me that your experience, with adventure started in childhood. How do you see adventure, and specifically adventure travel? What does it encompass? How do you define it if somebody, says, oh, I don't really know what that means?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually the number one question we've gotten from day one. So
Mm,
you're right in line. Adventure is it's a squishy term. It means
yeah.
different things to different people, and so we really set out to put some better parameters around it to understand, so that we could put guardrails in our own in our own targets of organizations we work with. And so we did a study with travelers. We're like, well, what really matters is what do travelers think? It doesn't matter what we think.
Mm,
And so we did this deep dive study and found that three themes came out really clearly to define the core of adventure. So I like to look at it as like a dartboard, and you've got the red bullseye in the middle. And if you have all three characteristics of nature, culture, and activity, you're in that red bullseye. And so
mm,
rather than saying, is something adventure travel or not adventure travel, we found that was way too binary. And it was more of a degrees of adventure. So the core encompasses immersion in nature, getting involved in the local culture, and then it's an active trip. As you get out further, and you only have two of those three, you're still pretty close to the target. Still adventure for a lot of people. When you get one further out, then it starts to fade into different types of tourism. So
yeah.
the beauty of that is that it means it's accessible to everyone. So an 18-year-old that's climbing a mountain in Nepal, that's adventure for them.
Right.
Somebody who says, "Look, I'm up there in my years, and I would love to walk from inn to inn in Ireland." Well, that's an adventure too.
Yeah.
They're just a little bit different. So it's very, in my mind, it makes adventure accessible, and I think everyone should have access to adventure.
I love that vision. And I think it means for a lot of people, they have probably done some adventure travel activities. Maybe they didn't categorize it that way in their mind, but you don't have to, rappel down a cliffside or, kayak on a glacier lake somewhere to do it, right?
That's exactly the way that I've thought about it. How many people say, "Oh, I'm going to go on an adventure trip"? Some do, but
Mm,
many go on a trip and then they come back and their friends say, "Wow, what an adventure you had." Yeah, I guess
yeah.
so. That was an adventure. So
Yeah.
yeah, we like to not be elitist and invite everybody into the world of adventure travel.
Yeah, that's such a great perspective. Now, the book, which you mentioned, it has been out for quite a while. It really focuses on a bunch of adventure opportunities for older travelers, and I love this because for years and years, people have told me, "Oh, seniors don't do adventure. Seniors don't do outdoors. Seniors don't." And I just keep saying, "No, I know people that age that absolutely do those kinds of things." So, I'd love to hear your perspective on what makes an adventure activity something that is a good fit for a traveler who, maybe they're approaching retirement, they're a little past retirement, they're still healthy. What are the parameters that you're looking for to say this is a great fit for you?
Well, I think, well, first of all, I can definitely pop the myth that older more mature travelers are less inclined to do adventure, because a full roughly 50% of the customers that travel with our tour operator members are above the age of 51.
Wow.
So, and then I can break that down even per region. Like in Asia, in Pacific, the adventure travelers tend to be a bit older. In Africa and Asia, the travelers tend to be a bit younger. But it's a very, very clear mix, and about a 50-50. And I think it really, Brian, it comes down to what are people excited about? Is it finally pulling the trigger on going and seeing the gorillas in Rwanda?
Hmm.
Is it a food tour of Thailand? That's the beautiful thing about the travel industry. Is anybody that's been in it for a while, and I'm sure they've all seen this too, is the variety of options have changed so radically over the last 30 years. And one of the concepts one of our advisors has recently been putting out there in his talks, which I totally agree with, is now there's kind of a dim sum of travel that there is a little bit less interest in, say, a 20-day hardcore bicycling tour.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's yeah, I'd like to cycle a couple days. I'd like to have a couple days of R&R. I definitely want to do a wine tour. I would love to see some of the wildlife on this trip. I'd like to hit a museum or two. And so this small bites concept of adventure, I think, is especially interesting to the more mature travelers because, they're more sophisticated in their life. A 22-year-old hardcore guy or gal might say, I want to go kiteboard for 2 weeks in Costa Rica. Good for you.
Right.
But somebody who's in their 60s, 70s, or 80s is going to say, I've done a lot of reading about this region, and I'm very curious about the green tea in Shizuoka, Japan, because that's the center of the green tea capital of Japan. But also it has this deep samurai history. And so I'd love to go to some of the sites. I also want to eat amazing food, and I wouldn't mind doing an e-bike tour, which is, by the way, I did all of that about 2 weeks ago, so it's fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the world is our oyster. It has never been more true because of the variety and the suppliers now that can offer almost anything if you can dream it up.
Yeah, I love that. There are so many entrepreneurs coming into the tours and experiences business these days, and it's very invigorating to be around them. Are you finding that your tour operator members are having to adjust either to a changing demographic or to that dim sum model, or make other adjustments to kind of react to what the traveling public is asking for these days?
Yeah, it's always a moving target for sure. And, one of the things that we've been hearing a lot more about recently is intergenerational travel and focusing on more mature travelers. There are dive companies that are aware that usually only one person in the family is a hardcore diver. So we better have some other options for the rest of the family so that mom or dad can guilt-free go diving for 4 or 5 days while the rest of the family does other things. So I think, that is absolutely a focal point.
Yeah.
So I can tell you just from the data from the last survey we did, the number one target from the adventure travel tour operator community are families. So there you've got that intergenerational. Then it's women, then travelers aged 50 and over, regional travelers, local, et cetera, et cetera. So it's these are not wild shifts, but it is definitely always changing.
Yeah. So it's really not the case that adventure travel is a bunch of fit, good-looking 20-somethings who are single and out there. They could be extras on a beer commercial. It's much more diverse than that, it sounds like.
Oh, wildly. And one of the misconceptions about adventure travel, and I'll give you an exact quote from somebody within the travel industry recently said to me, "Okay, you guys are adventurers, so are you like skydiving and scuba diving? Is that like are those the brackets?" And they were surprised when I told them the number one activity offered by our tour operators, and we have almost 1,000 in our community.
Wow.
That are paying members, and then there's more beyond that are community members. The number one activity is walking, hiking, trekking.
Wow.
The number two is cycling. So that's one of the reasons that we really wanted to get that adventure definition out there, to say it's nature, culture, and activity. Because people tend to think, oh, adventure, you guys, oh my gosh, I'm sure I don't fit in what you all do. But the reality is, the vast majority of the commercially offered adventure travel trips are very accessible.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So tell me about the supplier side. Your membership, is it growing? Is it changing? Are there new companies, new kinds of companies, new destinations sort of entering the market and trying to figure out how to serve this growing interest?
Absolutely. It is incredible to me. And we're putting on a trade event in Denver in 2 weeks. And one thing that a statistic that has stayed almost the same for 20 years is 50% of the companies attending are new to us. Wow. And that's partly because we move around. I used to go to a conference in Salt Lake City called the Outdoor Retailer Show. And it was there for like 30 years, twice a year. And there was no variation with the exception of a few innovative young companies. But we get introduced to new, interesting companies all the time. There's a company coming to Denver called the Mawa Collective, and I had never heard of them before. Saw the name. One of our advisors had talked to them, and it's Muslim American Adventure Women.
All right.
It is a very specific company offering tours around the world, and it's exploding because it's meeting the needs of a niche that is underserved in the adventure travel community. So the types and varieties of companies that are out there, it's absolutely, it's one of the most fun things of being in this space is you're always going, wow, wow, that's interesting. You do what? You offer what? There's a guy who I met at a event a couple months ago whose wife runs a Spanish wine cycling company. That's what they do. Spanish wines and cycling tours.
Yeah.
And so again, if you can dream it up, it probably exists. And I've heard from folks coming from sort of the bigger mass part of the industry that the number one thing they enjoy at our shows is meeting fresh new suppliers that they had never heard of, that they never would find any other way. And, these are not companies that are going to be able to, deal with 20,000 customers a year, but they certainly can serve a smaller audience and do it really, really well.
Now, a lot of people, I think when they picture adventure, even that broader definition you're talking about, their minds go overseas, right? For some travelers, overseas travel just isn't an option, whether it's cost or health, other restrictions. So I'm interested if you've got some examples of what some great approachable adventure opportunities in the U.S. might be.
Yeah, definitely, and those muscles definitely got flexed during COVID. By the industry because people really couldn't cross borders. And we're seeing some threats of that again right now due to geopolitical realities. And so, yeah, there's companies like Austin Adventures that are just really adept at the national parks. And, the opportunity to go into more specialty activities where it might be a little harder to manage yourself or find yourself. There's a company here in Colorado called Aspire Tours that puts together Rocky Mountain tours, and they've got all these little different pieces that can be added to a tour. So you can say, I want to go rafting, but I've never been rafting before, so I'm a little nervous. But this company is making me feel better about the opportunity to go because they got this long track record. They know the supplier who's doing the rafting, and then we'll go and have whatever elk sausages and on a mountaintop. One of the things we did last year was went to a ski area that has set up these yurts with this stunning view of the Rockies, and they serve a gourmet local meal. And it was a little pricey, but yeah, those sorts of things. Now, is that adventure travel? Yes. If you're traveling within your own country, it's a little bit, it's a little less on the cultural side, unless you're going to a place that's radically different than your own. Like
Right.
me going to Louisiana is definitely a cultural experience because I grew up in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would consider that definitely something to be in the adventure category as well. And there's a lot of great American operators that are offering really, really great outdoor nature and culture activities.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the national parks. That's something that's on a lot of people's minds right now. Of course, it's impossible for any of us to predict, what's going to happen with the situation with their funding and their staffing, that sort of thing. Can you tell us sort of what you're tracking, what the association is tracking, keeping an eye on as it relates to the parks and funding and staffing, and maybe how your members are adapting to that?
Yeah, the adapting part is still in the early stages. We are keeping an eye on it. To be honest, most of our members are outbound from the U.S. The majority of them. So we're not as closely following as, say, America Outdoors, which focuses on the rivers mostly of America and some other activities too. The concern about underfunding is not just a tour operator or traveler concern. It's an every person concern, and that has still not totally played out yet. So I don't know how to answer that, but we're all we're all concerned and watching closely and hoping that that the parks don't get so underfunded that they become exploited, abused, more dangerous, that sort of thing, or
Yeah.
closed. Parts of it
Right.
closed.
Yeah, exactly. I could also maybe see it being a little silver lining of opportunity for a tour operator to say, hey, you're going to have trouble getting into that park if you try to just do it by yourself. But because of our experience, relationships, equipment, whatever, we can still get you in. We can get you, the kind of experience that is going to be off limits. If you just
You're dead on there, and that holds for everywhere in the world. Like, somebody will ask me at a certain point. I went to a destination that's considered probably on the dangerous side, Iraq, but I went with an experienced operator, and it was great because they know the realities on the ground. They know how to react if something goes sideways, and they've got that depth of history there. And so I would say the same, like you just said, with the parks, for sure. The companies that have been doing it forever, they're going to know, okay, now this part of the park is really overcrowded during these months. And so, but we've got our secret spots within the park that we know that's a little more work to get to, but trust me, you're going to see wildlife that you're not going to see in the crowded zones, or you'll see it differently. So yeah, I'm such an advocate. And of course, there's a time and a place for every person to go on a trip and freewheel it, make decisions on the fly, don't have anybody help you. But, I could give a million examples of why having a travel advisor and or a tour operator involved in the process means you're going to miss some of the hardships that may affect your trip negatively. And you're going to potentially get access to things that you wouldn't get with no tour operator.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you spend a lot of time speaking about responsible travel. I'm interested to hear sort of your nutshell, approach to what that is and how that intersects with the idea of adventure.
Sure. And I want to put a disclaimer out there first that I know that using the words responsible or sustainable can make people's eyes glaze over instantly.
Right.
And I get that. And I get that. And nobody likes being preached at either. No one. So with that said, there is I think a natural relationship with sustainability for adventure travel because of nature and culture. Those are what fuel this part of the industry. So to not take care of those is kind of a long-term or short-term death sentence for that business. So the adventure travel businesses have a reason to protect the nature and to be protective of culture, because that's the secret sauce of what they do. Yeah. So I think there's that natural alignment of commerce, content, and conservation and community. The conservation, community, and commerce. So you're doing business, but you're doing it in a place that has some sensitivities that are different for everywhere. In some places, like I went to Namibia to see desert rhinos. We did our conference in Namibia in 2013, and I got to go in advance. And the tour operator was very clear. If we see a rhino, we will not come closer than a mile to it.
Wow. And
when I first heard that, I was like, wow, that's a disappointment. But then they explained, this is an incredibly rare animal. We want to disrupt them in no way. We want to make sure we're not getting in their way of, reproducing and creating more desert rhinos for the future. And so the first time I went, all we saw was tracks. And then the second time, we got to see a rhino about a mile away. But they made it better because they gave us super powerful binoculars. And then you sort of feel like kind of almost like a spy. It was kind of fun once you got into realizing, we're certainly not going to go pet the rhino, but we're not even going to get within, charging distance of it. So in some cases, it's super sensitive. And then in other cases, it's more of a don't throw trash on the trail. Let's just be good citizens here. So sustainability can take lots of different forms. It's really an effort to reduce harmful impacts and increase positive ones. So, and that can go everything from cultural to environmental. So in some cases, I know that in the gorillas in Africa, all the experts there are very clear that human and primates in the forest, our health is intertwined. So in other words, if you're sick with a communicable disease, you do not go see those animals while you're sick. That's just being responsible, right? So it doesn't have to be a shrill or preachy or whatever people perceive sustainability and responsibility as. It's really just about making travel the best it can be and protecting those things so that they can continue forward. And sometimes it's very sensitive, right? Especially in a cultural situation. That's why you really want an on the ground guy who's going to say, when we're in this village, here are the rules for you as visitors. Don't break these. If you do, it's probably going to mean that this tribe is not going to invite us back. And it's going to ruin it for everybody in the future. And it's going to be really uncomfortable for you and us. So, yeah.
That's really good. Now, there are some places in the world that are really grappling with whether they are going to be viable for tourism going forward. I think of the Galapagos. I think of Machu Picchu, maybe parts of Antarctica, similar things like that. You have members, I'm sure, that take people to those places. How do they navigate? How do you coach them to navigate that tricky lane between, wanting to be responsible, but also saying, this is our business, this is our livelihood, and it's something we feel like people need to see. Do you have a perspective on that balancing act?
Yeah, there's some destinations doing amazing work. I'll call out one just because I got to sit and hear them talk about their responsible marketing, and it's Svalbard, Norway. And they specifically do not do any more marketing of close-up shots of polar bears because they're never going to get you that close to see a polar bear like that. So one, it sets the expectation correctly that polar bear is a little ways off from the guest for lots of reasons, safety being a primary,
right?
But also, again, not disturbing the wildlife. And but their point is, we also want to be responsible marketers and say, this is about how far away you should be from a polar bear. You should never get closer than this anyway. So let's not do this, full face with mother and cub and giving this impression that you're going to be able to get that close, because you're not. And then some of the destinations have stopped marketing certain seasons. So I know of some destinations that are like, we do not market winter or summer. We're already slammed. We only market fall and spring. So you'll never see an image of a winter image of some of those destinations. And so Jackson, Wyoming has been really, really good about, because, that's a place that with no check and balance there, that place would be so overrun, and it's already pretty busy during the peak seasons. And they have this amazing community initiative that was driven by a couple of individuals who got everybody involved: the schools, the waste management, the federal agencies, the restaurants, the hotels, the public transportation, got them all in a room over and over and said, what do we want Jackson to be like for us? Recognizing that it is powered by tourism. But tourism is like fire. If it gets out of the fireplace, it's burning the house down.
Right.
So there are places really doing a great job of managing it. And I know of destinations also who have stopped using the hotel bed tax to market their destination. And now they're using it to do things like traffic mitigation or affordable housing for service providers, stuff like that, because they know, look, we've got enough people coming here. We just need to manage it right. And Brian, that is one of the number one subjects discussed at all our events last year with trade, is the destinations, the ones that are paying attention, are saying, how do I bring the right travelers to my destination? I don't necessarily want more. I want more of the right people. And the right people are those who are respectful, who are spending. There are certain forms of tourism that leave very little in a destination. And it's a big discussion today. And you're right, there are lots of places at risk.
Yeah. Are you hopeful that we as an industry may be able to help more people become that right kind of traveler?
I think so. I mean, I'm not a super veteran, but I've been in for 21 years. And I can tell you, going to some of the non-sustainability focused events 15 years ago, radically different than it is now.
Yeah.
I won't say which event, but it was a top tier major industry event. And I got asked to be the moderator for a panel on sustainability. And the room before me was it was packed to the gills because Robert Redford was speaking.
Oh, wow.
And then he left. And what was interesting is he had some sustainability messages in his talk. So I begged the organizers, can you please have him stay for our panel? Please, please, please. He'll be such a magnet. And of course, he was already on a plane by the time we by the time we talked to him. But then the room emptied out for our session, and it went from like 1,000 to 100. And afterwards, the organizer came up to me, and I kid you not, he said, "Well, congratulations on the least worst sustainability session we've ever had."
Oh my goodness!
It was just so disheartening. The lack of interest and the lack of care. And I don't feel that now. In some of those exact same events, it is a very different tone. So I am hopeful. And we need it because the numbers keep rising, right?
Yeah.
So the industry really does have to sort of own it. And we tell tour operators and destinations this all the time. We are guests in your place. We're coming to your living room. You get to make the rules. If you come to my house for Thanksgiving, I get to make the rules. Not that I'm setting rules for guests, but you know what I mean. Like, please don't feed the dogs turkey bones or whatever it is.
Right.
And that's just a common human courtesy, is to acknowledge that the people who are on the ground should be setting the rules. And I think that, probably 15, 18 years ago when I first started, I think way more destinations were like, okay, visitor, you're the captain, you're the king, you can, whatever you want to do, you can do. And it's definitely shifted more towards, okay, so we're so happy to have you here. And here's some do's and don'ts. And there are some don'ts. And so I think that's really important too. And so I do have hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Shannon, I could keep you all day asking you these kinds of questions. I know you've got other stuff to work on. What is the best way for someone to follow you, connect with you, grab a copy of the book if they want? How should they go about finding you?
Yeah, I'm always happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. So just my name there, Shannon Stowell, and that's primarily the way that I connect with other folks in the industry. The book is still available on Amazon unless it went off in the last months.
I saw it there yesterday, so I think we're good.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a fun book, and there's some really fun stories in there, and it's from all over the world. So hopefully it still is inspiring a few people out there. And it's published by National Geographic, so it's we had a great publisher and a great group of co-authors. And so Riding the Hulula to the Arctic Ocean is the book.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, before we let you go, we've got some questions we ask everybody, and these are just for fun, so no pressure. Just
I like fun.
Yeah, awesome. When you book travel, do you book window seats or aisle seats?
Oh, I'm always aisle if I can do it. Yeah. I bet no one ever says center, do they?
No one. If someone said center, I would say, like, are you okay? Like, blink twice if you need help, kind of situation.
Check your temperature.
Right.
So I go for aisle when I can.
Yeah, I feel you. Me too. What is one thing in your carry-on you wouldn't travel without?
That's a good one. I carry a bottle that's called Grail, Grayl.
Okay.
And it's an amazing water purification bottle.
Yeah.
And so, I used to only take it to developing destinations, but I've started taking it everywhere, because sometimes you'll be in a big city, even like London, and the water in the hotel will just be reeking of chlorine.
Yeah.
And so I bring my Grail bottle with me everywhere. I think they're about $80, so they're not cheap, but you can get it, especially if you're using mostly clear water, you can get hundreds and hundreds of bottles out of that. So it reduces single-use plastic. It gives you a safe drinking source. And I'll tell you, Brian, I've drunk out of the Amazon, out of the Ganges, out of a swimming pool in India. My wife drank out of a horse trough in Peru and never got sick. This bottle it's magical. So I never travel without it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Great tip. What is one thing you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
Oh, man. I'm going to give you an experience that has stuck in my head that I didn't get to do. because we didn't have the time. We were in Kurdistan, Iraq, and we pulled over on the side of the road to wave to a I don't think Bedouin is the right term, but a family that lives in a tent and are goat herders.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman came up and talked to our guide. She didn't know us. She wasn't asking for anything. She just said, "Would you guys like to stay? We'll slaughter a goat and spend the day sitting in the tent talking and getting to know each other and having tea and we'll slaughter one of our goats and feed you a meal." And our guide was like, "This would be so incredible, but unfortunately we have to get to this place by nightfall." And so we had to turn that down, and it has never left my mind. And that was 2009. And I've always thought, oh my gosh, what stories would I have heard sitting in that tent for half a day? Yeah. So that one's in my head, but hard to repeat.
Yeah. Boy, what an experience that would have been. And what a message that sends about the hospitality culture and, the human connection that someone would invite you to do that. That's incredible.
Kurdistan was incredible. I never drank so many teas with strangers as that trip. People just inviting you in. And at one point, the guide said, "Do you feel like you're always being watched?" And I said, "For sure." And he goes, "You know why they're watching you? Because you're now in their midst and you're their guest, and it is their job to protect you."
Wow.
And I had a totally different, that was like a mind-blowing moment to realize it was very safe in a place that, you could easily be very afraid of going.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
That's incredible. So last question, if you had a free airline pass and a week with nothing else to do, where would you be headed next?
Bhutan.
Really?
Yeah, with my wife. Yep. She's never been there. I was there once. It is one of a kind. And I've only been there once, and it was more than a decade ago. So I would love to do that. The other would be the tip of South America to the Magellan Strait, which my wife has been to and I haven't. And she has waxed poetic about how incredible that experience was. So one of those two things, I would get on a plane tomorrow.
Sounds like the two of you need to just trade dream trips and
exactly. That's kind of what it is.
One day. Yeah.
That's excellent. What it is.
Wonderful. Well, this has been great. Shannon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Brian. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for having me.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed that conversation with Shannon as much as I did. Shannon is a great guy, and I love his big tent vision for the role that adventure can play in the travel lives of people of all walks of life and of all ages. I want to take a minute and recap some things Shannon said that I think are extra important, and I want to make sure you don't miss them. When we were talking about the definition of adventure travel, Shannon said, "We did a deep dive study and found that 3 themes came out clearly to define the core of adventure: nature, culture, and activity." He said the beauty of that is it's accessible to everyone. So an 18-year-old who's climbing a mountain in Nepal, that's adventure for them. Somebody up there in years who would love to walk from inn to inn in Ireland, that's an adventure too. They're just a little bit different. He went on to say, "I think everyone should have access to adventure." Well, I completely agree with Shannon. One of the drums that I like to beat around here is that I believe everyone should have access to travel. And Shannon's outlook goes hand in hand with that. Everyone should have access to adventure, regardless of how old they are or what kind of physical things may be holding them back. What's an adventure for you may not be an adventure for me, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't enjoy it as such. And that doesn't mean that you should feel left out from the adventurous spirit of travel just because you can't do or don't enjoy doing the things that other more fit people might do. Now, when I talked to Shannon about the kinds of adventure opportunities available to us right here in the United States, he said those muscles definitely got flexed during COVID because people couldn't cross borders. He said there are companies that are really adept at the national parks. There's an opportunity to go into more specialty activities that you wouldn't be able to manage yourself or arrange yourself. He said there are a lot of great American operators offering a lot of great adventure activities. Now, I love this because Shannon is hitting on one of the core value propositions of group travel in general, which is that there is someone out there who can offer your travelers access and adventure and opportunities that you cannot manage yourself and that they certainly could not arrange themselves. This speaks to the power of partnership in our industry. If you are planning trips for a group, one of the best things you can do is to partner with experts in the places you're going or the kinds of activities that you enjoy doing, because they are guaranteed to be able to offer you options and sometimes even rates and pricing discounts that you will not be able to get for yourself. Finally, when I was asking Shannon about what it takes to create what he was referring to as the right kind of traveler, Shannon said, "We tell people all the time, we are guests coming into your living room. You get to make the rules." He said, "I think it's common human courtesy that the people on the ground should be making the rules. I think 15 years ago, it was whatever the visitor wanted to do, they could do. Now it has shifted more toward, we're so happy to have you here. Here are some do's and don'ts." This is such a great perspective. I think it's easy in our highly politicized culture where a lot of people are very strident about their views of the world. I think a great way to talk about being a responsible traveler is just to talk about being a good guest. You don't have to take a hard stance on a political issue. You don't have to come down one way or another on a hot button topic, but you can say, hey, we are guests in the home country that we're visiting. And the people here have some ways they want their home taken care of, and we are going to be great guests and honor that. I think that's also a great philosophy for anybody managing a destination, trying to figure out how to balance the needs of the tourism community against the needs of the local business environment, local residents, the local natural environment. Think of it as a guest-host relationship. Great stuff there from Shannon Stowell. Well, you heard in the interview Shannon's thoughts about how we can train people to be better travelers. And it got me to thinking, I wonder if there are things we can do to train people to be better travel professionals. I've been in the industry a long time, and I have learned through a lot of hard experience that there are people around who may be quote unquote good at their jobs and are yet wildly unprofessional. Well, I have some ideas about how we might change that. Those are the topic of today's Hot Minute. Yeah, that's right. The Hot Minute is the portion of the program where I take 60 seconds to give you my unfiltered views on an issue that impacts travel every day. And today we are asking the question, how do we train our friends and colleagues to become better travel professionals? So let's put 60 seconds on the clock and get into it. If you want to become a more professional tourism pro, there are 3 things you absolutely have to do. First, make yourself reachable. Yes, you need to have some work-life boundaries, but in general, people should be able to reach you via their preferred communication method, not just yours. That means you need to be diligent about returning emails, phone calls, and text messages. Second, you need to commit to being honest. Don't say you'll go somewhere or do something if you have no intention of actually following through. Saying an honest no is always better than saying yes and then ghosting. Finally, you need to prove that you're trustworthy. Your colleagues and clients are trusting you with their travel dreams, their money, and more. Take that responsibility seriously and give them your very best effort every time. That's the Hot Minute. That's how I see things anyway. Of course, as always, you are welcome to disagree with me, and we can still be friends. And hey, whether you agree or disagree, we would love to hear from you. You can send your thoughts, comments, or your favorite life lessons for young tourism professionals to podcast@grouptravelleader.com. I read every email that comes into that address. I really love hearing from you. And hey, you never know. Your ideas may just be the topic of the next hot minute. And while you're in the mood to give us some feedback, would you do me a big favor? Would you go to your favorite podcast playing app? And if you haven't already subscribed to the show, then do that now. While you're there, if you could leave us a review and give us a rating, that would be a big help. I'm so thankful to everyone who has done that so far. My thanks as well to Shannon Stowell for joining us today. On the next episode, I'm going to bring you a really insightful and inspiring conversation with Darcy Murray, who is the founder of the tour company Hooked, and is going to tell us all about the rise of alcohol-free travel. You won't want to miss that. Until then, though, remember this. At the end of the day, we are all on this trip together, so let's make it a good one. See you next time on Gather and Go. Gather and Go is hosted and executive produced by me, Brian Jewell. Our publisher is Mac Lacey. Danya Simmons is our creative director. Ashley Ricks is our circulation manager and graphic designer. Our sales team is Kyle Anderson and Talisa Reck. To advertise on the podcast, call Talisa at 859-253-0455. Gather and Go is a production of the Group Travel Leader. For more information about our magazines, podcasts, and events, visit us online at grouptravelleader.com.